Hi, my name is Caitlin, and I'm here to talk to you about some of the ways that I choose children's literature. So, how do we choose KidLit? Well, sometimes it probably seems like magic, except not really. In my case, there's a lot of research, a lot of industry knowledge, and a lot of just general knowledge I have gained by reading a lot of children's literature and following a lot of children's authors on social media. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the resources I have used to get to this point where I can sort of pick out award winners before they're award winners and know important books and, can figure out some good books to get. So this is a bit of an overview of what we're going to talk about. I use reviews, so that includes things from journals, newspapers, trade publications. Sometimes I find reviews by other librarians or by educators, and those are a great source too. I use authors and illustrators. They're not exactly resources, are they? They're people. But you get to know them, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a bit. I use awards. So I know that this award covers this topic that I want to cover, so I can, use that award. Book lists, again, much like awards, book lists are a great way to start. They can really help you build up. They can also help you if your students are returning to school and you have no clue what to give them because you are no longer 5 years old or 14 or whatever. That can be a great way to go to a themed book list and look up, book lists about going back to school or something like that. Other librarians and independent bookstores, people can be a great source of information. Your local public librarian, or if your school has a librarian, your school librarian, and a neighborhood indie, those are places and people who are going to have a really good idea of what the neighborhood is reading. And that is a great resource if you're trying to figure out what, let's say you're in a neighborhood school, what does this neighborhood really like to check out? Novelist and related databases can be great, and I'm going to asterisk novelist here and note that it is a proprietary database, so you do have to have a subscription. However, many public libraries, maybe even most public libraries, do have subscriptions to Novelist. That means that you, public library patron, also have access to Novelist database and all of its amazing resources for finding more books like Pigeon Has to Go to School. So if you're having trouble with it or you're not sure how to get in, just speak with your local public librarian, and it's a great resource that you should make use of as long as you have access to it. Now, children's literature organizations, conferences, important people in children's literature, these are all great resources as well, because you'll see what they're talking about, who's buzzing about what book, you'll get a feeling for what's out there that way. So when I say I consider the author an illustrator, you get to a point where you'll know, I know that this author writes books that always win awards, or this illustrator illustrates books where the illustrations win awards, or this author has a tendency to write about, dragons mixed with technology, and I have some students who really like magic, but I'm trying to teach them about tech, and so maybe I want to look at this book. So these are things that can be super useful for you to know. You also will get to know that you just enjoy them, or your students all love Mo Willems, or you like to use Duncan Tonatua as a great example of nonfiction that is beautiful and interesting. You figure it out as you go along. The intended audience. Now, you know what your intended audience is. Are you working with people in junior high school? Are you working with 12th graders? Are you working with 5th graders? Are you working with people in kindergarten? These are all super different intended audiences, and they need different things. So somebody who's like 4 years old probably doesn't want a page full of text because that's going to be a lot for them to sit through. But, some of them might be totally great with it. You're going to know them better than I do because you're working with them. Now, you're going to also know what they're interested in, what they need, what you need to teach them, which is going to be a big one as you go forward. Awards and prior awards won. Now, this is really handy, right? So you know that this author wins a lot of awards. This illustrator has won a lot of awards for their illustration. You can be pretty sure that they're probably going to give you a quality book for their next book, even if it doesn't win awards. Now, representation matters, right? We want our students to see themselves represented on the page. We want them to see the diversity of the world represented on the page. So we need to look for books that are not about just one segment of the population. And you might not know where to look. There are some great organizations to help with that, which we'll talk about coming on a bit later in this presentation. Now, we also have core values and critical concerns here at SXU. We are a Mercy institution. And there's a lot of ways to bring that Mercy framework into our book selection, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So the Sisters of Mercy's core critical concerns, are the earth, immigration, nonviolence, and racism. There are so many different ways to incorporate these into your book selection and into your teaching, just sort of to angle what you're doing towards a Mercy frame. And again, these are the Sisters of Mercy's core values. You can angle these into your teaching frame as well. I will also point out, right now here at SXU, these are our core values and critical concerns. When you get a full-time job out in the brave new world, your institution will probably have a value statement or critical concerns of some type, and that you'll want to pay attention to those as well. So I talked about reviews. Reviews are great. As someone in the profession, I'm pretty fond of a capsule review. It's a little tiny, gives me lots of information, and I can read it in a minute. So many of these that I've listed here are capsule review places. Magazines and newspapers tend to not do capsules. Booklist, Kirkus, Library Journal, and Publishers Weekly include children's material. They do not focus on it, so that's not their exclusive domain. Hornbook and School Library Journal, that's what they focus on. They're all about children's material, from board books all the way through, young adult material. And then sometimes even new adult, but that's not really something you have to worry about. A note about Kirkus. Kirkus is infamous. Kirkus hates everything. So a starred review from Kirkus tends to be a really big deal, which also means that the Kirkus Prize is kind of a big deal too. Magazines and newspapers, you might find other teachers or librarians or people in the field writing reviews as well on blogs or other professional sites. That can be great. New York Times tends to do a best of list at the end of every year. Chicago Trib does small reviews of children's books throughout the year, so you'll find things around. Now, let's talk about the awards. There are a lot of awards, and this is not a complete list. We're going to start with Critics' Choice Awards. So the experts, whoever they are voting on these awards. This page is the American Library Association's Youth Media Awards, otherwise known as the Oscars of Children's Literature. And you've probably seen some of these. We definitely own a lot of them here at the SXU Library, so they're available for you to check out. But these are some of the most well-known awards in children's literature. They're also not the only ones. So this is another small selection of the awards out there that include or focus on children's literature. As I said, there's a lot. And I do have lists that you can check out elsewhere. And there's so many more. That's such an incomplete list. But there's more. And it's the Reader's Choice that we're going to talk about this time. So here I'm focusing on Midwestern states and then some slightly larger Reader's Choice Awards. So Illinois' Young Reader's Choice Awards include the Monarch Award, which is kindergarten through third grade, the blue STEM, which is third through fourth, the Caudle, which is like roughly middle grade, fourth through eighth, and the Lincoln Award is high school. Then there's the Golden Archer in Wisconsin, the Young Hoosier, and the Rosies in Indiana. All of these are things that students and young readers will say in the state get to vote on. So if you're teaching third graders, you get, as you can see, you're in an exciting crossover period. They can vote on both the Monarch and the Blue STEM. And this could actually be a great thing to use to get your class more stoked up, because a lot of students get really stoked about the idea that they get to choose the next winner. Or at least I have seen people get really stoked. I've even seen attempted ballot box stuffing. So, it can be really exciting. And I'm not sure ballot box stuffing matters in this particular Reader's Choice case. So, just be aware of it. People can get really stoked. The Goodreads Choice Award, I personally think should have a bit of an asterisk around things like the picture book category, because I totally vote on picture books on Goodreads. And, I am an adult and a librarian, and so I'm probably one of those experts, but I'm not sure I'm the one who should be voting on a Reader's Choice Picture Book Award. So I think the Monarch might be a bit more legit there. The International Literacy Awards, bit of a cop-out here because this is technically a list. However, it's a list that is chosen by young readers, so it's not a cop-out. YALSA, Teens Top 10, YALSA stands for Young Adult Library Services Association. This is a really cool one, because a mix of teens and librarians choose the books that end up on the long list, and then teens are the ones who vote for them. And this is where I saw ballot box stuffing. People got very excited about the Teens Top 10. That may have just been, I was working with teens at that time. I wouldn't be surprised if Monarch was getting ballot box stuffing as well. So this can get people really stoked. Okay. There's more. There's so much more. It's not just awards. Let's take a look at the lists. So there's a lot of different lists. This is really an incomplete list of lists, and I'm actually going to point out, I put down here your local library. Your local library probably has book lists, and even if they don't, they'll be happy to help you generate book lists or to come up with book lists for you. They're trained to do this. They might be bored otherwise, drop by and ask for help. That's totally what we're there for. There are so many resources to help you as you try to figure out what some good materials are for your class or your needs or your interests. So these are just a very few of those resources. Note the Center for Children's Books and the Cooperative Children's Book Center. These are both places that have a lot of lists and a lot of other resources that can help you sort of figure out where you're going. Novelist, your public library has Novelist, remember? Novelist can be great if your class only likes to read those pigeon books by Mo Willems, and you need other books that are sort of like the pigeon, but not quite like the pigeon. And again, your public library can be great for that too, because you can just walk in and say, oh my gosh, I'm so tired of the pigeon. Do you have anything else that might be similar? And they might just give you a bunch of Elephant and Piggy, but they might help you find something else. And I've mentioned this a little bit before, but you need help finding representative books. We Need Diverse Books is a great place to start, but there's so many more. The Center for the Study of Multicultural Children's Books, for example, is one really great place to start. So, you need to know children's books, right? You want to know kids' books really well so that you can teach them, so that you can help your students, so that you can find books that help your students learn things without making them feel like they're learning things, so that they actually feel good about it. What's the way to know children's books? It's to read children's books. Read as many as you can for research purposes. Very important. Well, you've got your library card. You're welcome to come into SXU Library. Please come in. If you have questions, comments, let us know and come visit us. You can also get in touch with me directly. I am here to help, and good luck with your projects.